When my stepmother stood and calmly declared that I'd been written out of my father's will, I didn't flinch. The family lawyer simply smirked, double-clicked a folder on his laptop, and opened a file labeled, "If Naomi speaks first." Even in death, my father was still 3 moves ahead. That file wasn't a document. It was a trap he'd built years ago for the day she overplayed her hand. We sat in a downtown Atlanta law office that smelled of lemon polish and restraint. A digital recorder blinked red on the table, documenting every breath. Across from me sat Naomi Greer, my father's widow and my longest enemy. At 55, she still looked carved from confidence, bronze skin, hair coiled into a perfect twist, pearls glowing under the recessed lights. Behind her perched her entourage, her sister Regina, and 2 cousins whose job was to look sympathetic and silent. I'm Talia Monroe, only child of the late Victor Monroe, founder of Monroe Urban Holdings, the company that built half of Atlanta's skyline. For 14 years, Naomi treated me like a rumor that refused to fade. Today she meant to erase me officially. "Before we begin," she said, rising, "there's a new addendum to Victor's will, properly witnessed and notarized." She slid a sealed envelope to attorney Ellis Davenport, my father's lawyer for almost 30 years. It had been 4 days since the funeral. 4 days since I'd stood by his grave at Hillside Memorial, wondering whether he ever realized how thoroughly she'd cut me from his life. Ellis opened the envelope. Naomi folded her hands, eyes bright. "Given Talia's prolonged absence from her father's life," she began, "and her lack of involvement during his illness, Victor redirected her inheritance to relatives who were present and attentive." The words absence and redirect stung. I wanted to tell her about the calls she blocked, the hospital visits she canceled, the birthdays I spent waiting for invitations that never came. But anger wouldn't help. My father had taught me that patience wins courtrooms and wars. Behind Naomi, her relatives shifted like a jury rehearsed for victory. Regina dabbed her eyes. The cousins exchanged glances heavy with greed. Ellis kept reading, his calm face giving nothing away. Outside, Atlanta's skyline glimmered through drizzle, Victor Monroe's concrete legacy watching silently. Finally, Ellis murmured, "Interesting." Naomi's posture stiffened. She didn't like mysteries she hadn't authored. 2 years earlier, my father had asked me to meet him for coffee in a quiet cafe far from his office. He looked older but mischievous, the kind of look that meant he was planning something. He handed me a sealed envelope. "If anything ever feels wrong," he said, "take this to Jerome Banks. Don't open it, just trust the timing." I'd laughed, thinking he was being melodramatic. "Promise me, Talia." I promised. That envelope had sat untouched in Jerome's safe ever since. After my mother died when I was 9, the house on River Walk Lane changed overnight. Her piano went to the basement. Her photos disappeared. Her favorite garden became Naomi's project. 18 months later, Naomi appeared, poised, charming, the kind of woman who made people feel chosen just by noticing them. Within a year, she'd redecorated every memory out of existence. By 12, I found my mother's china label for donation. By 14, the hallway portraits were replaced with minimalist prints. Whenever I called my father, Naomi answered first. "He's in meetings, sweetheart. Try next week." Next week always came with another excuse. Birthdays passed. College years vanished. When I graduated from Spelman, my father sent a typed note ending with "Love, Dad and Naomi." The signature looked photocopied. One summer I drove home unannounced. The backyard was filled with Naomi's colleagues and laughter. My father was flipping ribs, smiling like the world had never broken his heart. "Talia!" he said, startled. "I didn't know you were coming." Naomi appeared instantly. "Oh, darling, we'd have prepared your room if you'd called." My old room was now a beige guest suite. She placed me in the pool house. That night I overheard her tell Regina, "She drops in when it suits her. Victor finally has peace." From then on she managed everything. His calls, his friends, even his schedule. By the time he was diagnosed, she'd rewritten history, so completely that I looked like the daughter who'd walked away. I found out about the cancer from a Monroe Urban analyst who assumed I already knew. By then it was stage 4. Every visit I begged for time. Every time she said he needed rest. I saw him 4 times in 9 months while her family posted daily bedside photos captioned #FamilyFirst. Now, in Ellis Davenport's office, she adjusted her jacket like a victor savoring her win. Ellis tapped his keyboard. "Before we proceed," he said evenly, "I'd like to confirm this document's authenticity." He opened another folder, one Naomi hadn't supplied, and pressed play. My father's voice filled the room. "If Naomi Greer speaks first, pause the reading and play this file." Naomi froze. "Ellis, you know what to do." "Talia, if you're there, trust me." Silence swallowed the room. Ellis stopped the playback. It seems Mr. Monroe anticipated this moment. Naomi's calm cracked. "What is this nonsense?" "It's your husband's contingency clause," Ellis replied. While she tried to recover, I remembered my father once telling me, "Power isn't control, it's preparation." He hadn't been weak, he'd been planning. Naomi mistook patience for surrender. Ellis retrieved a smaller envelope embossed with my father's initials. "Miss Monroe," he said, "this was delivered to me 2 years ago with specific instructions." Naomi bristled. "This is outrageous." "Actually, it's precisely what your husband wanted," Ellis said, sliding it toward me. Inside was a single handwritten note. "Open nothing. Say nothing. Watch." Beneath it lay a short code. I passed it to Ellis. He entered it, and the laptop bloomed with files, recordings, timestamps, notarized pages. Naomi's complexion turned to chalk. Ellis examined the screen. "Before any amendments are accepted, these must be authenticated. Considering the irregularities, the signatures dated during Mr. Monroe's hospitalization, the duplicate seals, I'm suspending this reading pending investigation." Naomi's voice sharpened. "You can't do that." Ellis's smile was almost kind. "Your husband ensured that I could." The recorder blinked steadily, memorializing every word. For the first time in 14 years, the air in that room felt like mine again. I could almost hear my father's voice. "Don't rush revenge, baby. Let the truth do the heavy lifting." Now I understood. The truth had just stood up. "Would you like me to MOV?" Naomi didn't speak for several seconds after Ellis suspended the will reading. Her face twitched once, twice, before she forced a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Victor always did love theatrics," she said. "This is probably one of his little puzzles." Ellis calmly packed his folders, unfazed. "Until the documents are verified, all transfers are frozen." His tone was polite, absolute. The final click of his briefcase felt like a door closing. Naomi's composure cracked. "You're making a mistake, Ellis. You know who pays half your firm's bills." He looked up, unbothered. "And I remember who built those buildings that pay them." The quiet loyalty in his voice hit her harder than any insult. She turned to me, smiling like a blade. "Enjoy your little moment, Talia. It won't last." I didn't reply. The recorder's red light was still on, collecting every threat. When she finally swept out with her entourage, the room seemed to breathe again. Ellis studied me. "Your father trusted you with something, didn't he?" I hesitated, then nodded. "He told me to wait for the right moment." "Well," he said, sliding me a card, "that moment's here. Call Jerome Banks, he's expecting you." Outside, rain turned to sunlight. For the first time since the funeral, I felt something close to calm. That evening I met Jerome at his office, a modest brick building downtown. He'd been my father's best friend, his business partner in the early days before the company grew too large for friendship. He poured 2 coffees, dark and unsweetened, just like my father used to drink. "She finally showed her hand," he asked. "She tried. Daddy saw her coming." Jerome gave a dry chuckle. Victor always was the smartest man in the room. He unlocked a floor safe and pulled out a familiar envelope, the one my father gave me years ago. He told me to hold this until the day Naomi went too far. Inside was a flash drive and a note. "For the day truth needs proof." We plugged it in. Folder after folder appeared. Bank transfers, emails, medical notes, testimonies. My father's voice played in one of the audio files, raspy, deliberate. "If you're hearing this, Talia, then she's already rewritten the will. Naomi's been funneling company money through fake nonprofits tied to her family. I've tried to stop her quietly, but the board believes I'm confused. Ellis knows what to do. When the time comes, you'll have to finish what I started." Each file confirmed what I'd feared. Millions stolen, signatures forged, emails arranging corrections to documents. There were scans of medical records, proving my father was sedated when Naomi claimed he'd signed the codicil. She built her empire on a sick man's silence. Jerome sat back, shaking his head. He didn't tell you because he wanted to keep you safe. He knew she'd burn anyone who got in her way. I whispered. He let her think she'd won. He let her hang herself, Jerome said. Now it's time to pull the rope. 4 hours we cataloged everything. When we finished, he closed his laptop. Let Ellis handle the courts. You just stay quiet and ready. The next morning my phone was full of alerts. Naomi's people were already whispering that I'd forged evidence, claiming grief had made me unstable. It was the same tactic she'd always used, discredit first, destroy later. I turned off my phone and drove to the house on Riverwalk Lane. The gates still recognized my old code. The garden was perfect, sterile, lifeless. I parked by the fountain where my father once taught me chess, the sound of water trickling like memory. Inside, the air smelled of lilies and cold marble. Naomi's taste, elegant, heartless. I walked through the rooms until I reached my father's study. The door was locked, but his old brass key still fit. The desk was immaculate, papers stacked in perfect symmetry. On it sat a framed photo of us, me as a child on his shoulders. I touched the glass lightly. I'm here, Daddy, I whispered. A voice came from behind. You shouldn't be. Naomi stood in the doorway, wrapped in silk and venom. You think breaking in will change anything? I didn't break in, I said. This house remembers me, even if you erase the pictures. Her laugh was low and sharp. You always needed a villain, Talia. Maybe you should look in the mirror. I don't need to, I said. You've reflected yourself enough. Her eyes flicked toward the corner camera, realizing too late it was blinking red. Ellis still had access to the house systems. You think you can win with a few files, she hissed. I've spent 10 years running this company beside Victor. The board trusts me. They trusted him, I corrected. You just borrowed his reputation. Her nostrils flared. He pitted you. You were the daughter he couldn't fix. I felt the hit but didn't flinch. Then why are you scared? For a moment, her mask slipped. Because you have no idea how dirty this game gets. She turned, heels echoing down the marble hallway, leaving her perfume and poison behind. That night Ellis called. We verified the documents. The codicil's fake. The notary's signature was lifted from an old mortgage file. So it's over? I asked. Not yet, he said. But it will be soon. I'm filing the injunction tomorrow. Naomi's in serious trouble. By morning, news had broken about the fraudulent accounts. Reporters crowded Naomi's gates, shouting questions. Her cousins vanished from social media. The company board called an emergency meeting. Jerome texted me only 2 words. It's working. I stayed silent, watching it unfold from my apartment window, as if it were someone else's life unraveling on screen. For years, Naomi had built herself into an untouchable myth. Now the foundation was cracking, and she knew who struck the first blow. That evening, a small package arrived without a sender's name. Inside was a flash drive identical to the first one, and a note in my father's handwriting. You're almost there. I plugged it in. A single video played. My father, pale but steady in a hospital bed, looked straight into the camera. Talia, if you're seeing this, she's already tried to erase you. Don't waste your heart on anger. Finish what I couldn't. Then live your life freely. The screen went dark, leaving his face burned into my mind. I sat there for a long time, the hum of the city muffled by the weight of his words. Revenge wasn't the lesson. Justice was. He hadn't wanted me to fight her for money. He wanted me to restore the truth. At sunrise, I dressed in the black blazer he'd given me after my first internship. The mirror reflected a woman who finally understood her father's silence. He hadn't abandoned me. He'd been teaching me patience. When I stepped outside, the air was cool, sharp, alive. The war Naomi had started was almost over, but the real battle, for my father's name, for peace, was just beginning. By the time I reached the Monroe urban headquarters that Monday morning, reporters were already stationed outside the glass doors. The building looked different now, its mirrored surface still shining, but the reflection fractured, like it knew a storm was coming. Inside, the receptionist's smile faltered when she saw me. She whispered into her headset, and within seconds, security appeared. not aggressive but alert. "I'm here for the board meeting," I said, my voice steady. "Talia Monroe." They exchanged looks, then one nodded. "Mr. Davenport's waiting for you upstairs." The elevator ride to the 21st floor felt like a countdown. I could almost hear my father's voice in the hum of the cables. "Keep your shoulders square, your tone calm, and your facts sharp." When the doors opened, Ellis was already there, standing beside a long glass wall that overlooked the city. He looked tired but ready, the kind of calm that comes from knowing the truth is on your side. "Naomi's already inside," he said quietly. "She brought her own attorney. They'll fight hard." "I'm ready." He studied my face for a moment. "You look just like him when you say that." Inside the conference room, 12 board members sat in polished chairs, tension thick in the air. At the head of the table, Naomi wore navy blue and a smile that could sell lies for a living. Her lawyer, a man in his 40s with too much confidence and too little conscience, adjusted his tie. "Miss Monroe," Naomi greeted sweetly, "how nice of you to join us. I assume this is about the slander circulating online." Ellis stepped forward. "Actually, it's about financial misconduct and forgery. As of this morning, a court injunction has frozen all asset transfers related to Mr. Victor Monroe's estate." The room went silent. One board member coughed softly. Another leaned back, watching Naomi. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "I've done nothing but protect this company since Victor's health declined." Ellis clicked a remote. The screen behind him lit up. Emails, bank records, and legal documents appeared in sequence. "These transfers," he said, "show over $12 million moved from Monroe Urban's charity accounts into shell organizations tied to your relatives. All under your approval." Naomi's lawyer leaned forward. "You can't prove she authorized those transactions." Ellis pressed another key. The screen displayed scanned letters with Naomi's electronic signature and timestamp logs from her office. "We can," he said. "And we already have." Naomi's composure began to falter. "This is an ambush," she hissed. "Victor's daughter is trying to destroy everything he built." I finally spoke. "No, Naomi. I'm saving what he built. You've been looting it for years." Her eyes burned into mine. "You think anyone here believes you? I ran this company while you were busy playing victim." "Then let them decide," I said, gesturing toward the board. "Because I have something else." I handed Ellis a small flash drive, the same one Jerome and I had uncovered. He plugged it into the projector. The video began. My father appeared on screen, pale but alert in his hospital bed. "If you're watching this," he said, "it means Naomi has tried to alter my estate. She is not authorized to act on my behalf. I built Monroe Urban for the city, for the people who trusted me, not for greed." The boardroom fell into complete silence. Even the HVAC system seemed to pause. Naomi shot up, face flushed. "That video's fake." Ellis replied smoothly. "The metadata proves it was recorded 3 weeks before his passing. Verified and timestamped by the hospital security system." One of the senior board members, a woman named Dr. Pauline Givens, who'd known my father since his early days, spoke up. "Naomi, I remember Victor telling me he suspected misuse of the charity funds. He just didn't want to make it public. I didn't believe him then. I do now." The words hit Naomi like a slap. She turned to her lawyer, but even he was avoiding her eyes. "This meeting," Ellis said, "is being recorded for legal accuracy. As counsel for Mr. Monroe's estate, I'm recommending an immediate internal audit and suspension of Mrs. Greer's executive privileges." Naomi's hands trembled as she slammed them onto the table. "You can't do this to me. Victor loved me, he trusted me." I met her gaze. "He trusted you to reveal yourself. You just did." Security entered quietly, as if summoned by justice itself. Naomi's lawyer muttered something about due process, but no one was listening. As she was escorted out, she turned one last time, eyes full of hate and disbelief. "You think you've won? You have no idea what you've started." When the door closed, the board exhaled collectively. Ellis turned off the projector. "We'll finalize the transfer of control to the rightful heir pending court confirmation," he said. "Miss Monroe, you should prepare for a media statement." "I don't want a statement," I said softly. "I just want the truth to stay louder than her lies." The meeting adjourned quietly. Outside, cameras flashed as I stepped into the sunlight. Reporters shouted questions I ignored. The air felt different, lighter, though far from easy. Justice had begun, but closure still felt distant. That night, I met Jerome again at a small restaurant tucked between old brick buildings. He raised a glass when I walked in. "To Victor," he said. "To peace," I added. He smiled. "You think it's over?" I hesitated. She said I have no idea what I've started. Jerome's face darkened slightly. "She still has connections. People she paid to keep quiet. Be careful. Let her come," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I've got nothing left to lose." Over the next few weeks, investigations confirmed everything. Naomi's assets were frozen, her name splashed across headlines as the widow who tried to steal a legacy. Her cousins fled the city. The company's reputation, though shaken, began to recover. I was appointed interim chairwoman until the estate finalized. Still, something didn't sit right. My father had always been meticulous. There had to be another layer, something beyond money and property. One evening, I was going through his old files when I found a black notebook hidden inside a hollow drawer panel. Inside, he'd written, "Legacy isn't what we build. It's who we leave ready." On the last page, a single line stood out. "Find the letter beneath the bridge." I knew exactly which bridge he meant. The old one near the neighborhood where he grew up, a spot we used to visit when I was a kid. The next morning, before sunrise, I drove there. Mist rolled over the water, soft and gray. Under one of the concrete beams, taped inside a metal box, I found a weathered envelope. It contained a letter and a small photograph. The letter read, "Talia, if you're reading this, it means you've chosen truth over comfort. Good. The company isn't the end, it's the beginning. Use it to build something that serves people again. Promise me you won't become what I fought against. And if you ever doubt yourself, remember, preparation is the purest form of love." By the time I finished reading, tears blurred the ink. The photograph showed the three of us, me, my father, and my mother, standing at that same bridge years ago. He looked alive, unburdened, happy. I slipped the letter back into the envelope and whispered, "I promise." When I turned to leave, sunlight broke through the clouds, warming my face. For the first time in years, the air felt clear. The storm was finally passing, but deep down, I knew the story wasn't finished yet. 3 weeks after Naomi's removal, the city buzzed with gossip. News anchors dissected every headline, radio hosts replayed clips of her shouting in that boardroom, and online forums were flooded with speculation about what really happened inside Monroe Urban Holdings. Some painted me as the dutiful daughter who restored justice. Others called me the opportunist who tore down a grieving widow. At first, I ignored it. But one morning, while scrolling through emails, I saw the subject line, "You don't know who you're dealing with." The message was blank except for a single video attachment. My stomach clenched as I clicked. The footage showed me leaving the company building, cropped and zoomed like I was under surveillance. Someone had followed me. The timestamp was from the day after Naomi's arrest. I forwarded it to Ellis immediately. He called within minutes. "You're being watched," he said flatly. "We expected this. She still has loyal people inside the company. Don't go anywhere alone for a while." It felt surreal. One moment I was running board meetings, the next I was checking my rearview mirror at every stoplight. Even Jerome noticed my tension when we met later that week. "She's desperate," he said. "When people like Naomi lose control, they start reaching for anything sharp enough to hurt back." He wasn't wrong. 2 days later, anonymous stories appeared online claiming I'd forged my father's signature to seize the estate. Fake screenshots circulated. The same news outlets that had praised me now hinted at scandal. It was Naomi's final play, poison the truth, until everyone doubted it. I met Ellis in his office, exhaustion written all over both our faces. "Can we prove she's behind the smear?" I asked. "Not directly," he said, "but she's sloppy when angry. Her cousin tried to wire money to a journalist last night. It's traceable. Once it hits, we'll expose her for witness tampering." Still, the damage stung. I stopped checking social media altogether. My phone buzzed endlessly with interview requests, but I turned them all down. I wasn't chasing headlines. I was fighting to preserve what was left of my father's name. One afternoon, as I walked out of the office garage, I caught sight of a black sedan idling across the street. Tinted windows, no plates. It had been there for 3 days. My instincts screamed caution. I called Ellis, who insisted on hiring private security until the court case ended. That night, as the security detail trailed behind my car, I drove past the old community center my father had helped rebuild years ago. The place was half empty now, the paint peeling, the playground rusting. He'd once told me, buildings don't change cities, people do. I realized then that everything he'd worked for wasn't just about steel and contracts. It was about giving back. Naomi had turned it into a business of vanity. I needed to turn it back into something human. The next morning, I met with Dr. Pauline Gibbons, one of the senior board members. "We're ready to reinstate the Monroe Urban Foundation," she said. "Victor started it to build low-income housing. It fell apart after Naomi took over. You should relaunch it." The idea lit something in me that power and revenge never could. "I want to," I said. "In his name, but for the city." 4 weeks, I poured my energy into rebuilding that project. We renamed it the Monroe Renewal Initiative, dedicated to funding safe housing and scholarships for single parents. The media shifted focus. Suddenly, people saw not just the scandal, but the purpose behind the Monroe legacy again. Then came the court date. Naomi appeared thinner, her hair darkened, her smile replaced by something brittle. She avoided my eyes as we sat across from each other. The courtroom smelled of paper and nerves. The judge's voice echoed as he read the verdict. Based on the presented evidence, the court finds that the addendum to the will is fraudulent. Control of the Monroe estate reverts fully to Miss Talia Monroe, as outlined in the original testament. The words landed like thunder. Naomi slumped slightly, her hands trembling. The judge continued. "Furthermore, criminal investigations regarding embezzlement will proceed under state jurisdiction." Outside, reporters swarmed, but I said nothing. I simply looked up at the courthouse sky, bright, endless, and breathed for what felt like the first time in years. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by quiet. The city lights shimmered through the window. My father's watch rested on the table beside me, still ticking softly. For months, I'd chased justice, fought lies, and carried the weight of grief disguised as strength. Now, with Naomi exposed and the company safe, the silence felt almost foreign. Jerome called. "You did it, kid." "No," I said softly. "He did. I just finished what he started." He chuckled. "That's what legacy is." But peace didn't arrive neatly. The next morning, I found a letter slid under my apartment door. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was Naomi's. It read, "You took everything. But ghosts don't fade. Talia. They wait." I stared at the paper for a long time, unsure whether to laugh or tremble. Naomi was behind bars, yet somehow she was still finding ways to reach me. Ellis urged me to ignore it, but that night I dreamed of her standing in my father's study again, smiling that cold smile. When I woke, the city was bathed in pre-dawn stillness, and I finally understood what my father had meant by preparation is love. He hadn't been teaching me to fight enemies. He'd been teaching me to survive the aftermath. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding both the company and myself. I hosted the first Monroe Renewal Community event, a modest gathering at the same center that had once fallen apart. Kids laughed, parents smiled, and for the first time, the name Monroe wasn't whispered with scandal but with hope. After the event, as the sun dipped below the skyline, I stood alone on the balcony overlooking the city my father helped build. The wind brushed my face, carrying a faint scent of rain and jasmine. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was standing in his shadow. My phone buzzed, a message from Ellis. Case closed. Funds restored. He'd be proud. I smiled, typing back. We both are. When I looked out again, the skyline reflected the last streaks of sunset, tall and unbroken. Somewhere out there, Naomi's empire had crumbled, but the foundation my father laid, the one built on purpose and integrity, was still standing. And so was I. I whispered into the fading light, "Rest now, Daddy. We're good." For the first time, the words didn't ache. They healed. Spring came early that year. The city seemed softer, the air warmer, as if the weight that had hung over everything for months was finally lifting. It had been nearly 6 months since the court ruling, and life at Monroe Urban Holdings had settled into something resembling peace. The name that once stirred controversy was now being rebuilt with quiet pride. Employees walked the halls with purpose again. The walls that once echoed with suspicion now hummed with renewed hope. I had spent those months rebuilding both the business and myself. The Monroe Renewal Initiative had completed its first housing project, a set of affordable apartments in the same neighborhood where my father grew up. We named it the Victor Residences, and when the ribbon was cut, I felt something shift inside me. For the first time, I wasn't doing this to prove anything. I was doing it because it was right. After the ceremony, Jerome joined me on the roof, overlooking the block of freshly painted buildings. "You'd be proud, you know," he said quietly. "Not because of the money, but because you remembered what mattered." I smiled. He used to say that every building tells a story. I just wanted his to end right. Jerome nodded. "It didn't end. You're still writing it." A light breeze swept across the roof, carrying laughter from below, families moving into their new homes, children chasing each other across the courtyard. It felt like the city itself was breathing again. But the past has a way of whispering even when you think it's done with you. A week later, I received a letter from the state correctional facility. No return name, but I knew who it was from. Naomi. I sat in my office for an hour before opening it. "Talia," it began. "They say time heals, but prison only sharpens what's left of you. I spent years believing I could control everything, Victor's empire, his memory, even you. I was wrong. He loved you more than I ever understood. I thought taking from you would fill the hole he left, but it only made it deeper. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I finally understand what he saw in you, the part of him that never quit." For a moment, I just stared at the words, unsure how to feel. Anger, pity, relief, maybe all of it at once. I folded the letter carefully and placed it inside the black notebook I'd found under the bridge, the one where my father's handwriting still lingered like a quiet conversation. That evening, I visited his grave for the first time since the trial. The cemetery was quiet except for the rustling of the trees. I knelt beside the headstone, brushing away the early spring leaves. "I got your letter," I said softly. "The one under the bridge. You were right. Legacy isn't about what you leave. It's about what you teach people to carry forward." The sun dipped lower, turning the sky a deep gold. For a moment, it almost felt like he was standing there beside me, hands in his pockets, that knowing smile on his face. "I did what you asked," I continued. "The company's safe. The foundation's alive, and I'm okay." Finally, I placed a single white lily on the grass and stood up. The wind swept through the trees again, and I swear I heard him say, "Good girl." As I walked back to my car, I realized something important. For so long, I defined myself through what I'd lost. My mother, my father, my childhood, even my sense of peace. But standing there, in the fading light of a day I'd rebuilt from ruin, I understood. I hadn't lost anything. I'd been refined by it. The following week, Monroe Urban hosted its first charity gala under my leadership. The ballroom shimmered with warm light, filled with people who had once doubted me but now looked at me with genuine respect. Jerome gave a short speech, introducing me as the woman who rebuilt the meaning of Monroe. When I took the stage, the applause felt heavy with gratitude, not just from them, but from every worker, every family, every person who had ever believed that truth still mattered. "Thank you," I began. "My father used to say that the best buildings aren't the ones that touch the clouds, they're the ones that hold people up. Tonight isn't about victory. It's about restoration, about turning something broken into something that breathes again." The room fell silent, and I could feel the emotion ripple through it. "The Monroe Renewal Initiative isn't just a project," I said. "It's a promise. To the city, to every child who deserves better, and to the people who taught me that strength isn't loud, it's consistent." After the gala ended, I stepped outside into the cool night air. The city's skyline glowed, reflected in the glass windows of the buildings my father once designed. Somewhere behind those lights were stories, some beautiful, some painful, but all real. Jerome joined me again, his suit jacket draped over one shoulder. "You did it," he said. "You turned a war into a foundation." I laughed softly. Maybe peace was the goal all along. He nodded. "Peace with purpose. That's the kind your father would have liked best." As he walked away, I looked up at the stars scattered above the city, faint but persistent. I thought about Naomi's letter, not as a wound reopening, but as proof that even the worst hearts can face themselves eventually. I wouldn't reply. Some closures don't need words. Later that night, back at home, I opened my window and let the night air drift in. On my desk sat the three things that had survived everything. My father's watch, my mother's piano key charm, and that black notebook. I placed them side by side. Three fragments of the same love that had built me. I whispered into the quiet, "It's done, Daddy. Really done." The city outside hummed, a steady, living rhythm. And for the first time since I could remember, I wasn't haunted by loss or driven by vengeance. I was simply alive, exactly where I was meant to be. The next morning, I woke before dawn and walked to the bridge where I'd found his final letter. The mist curled above the water, glowing faintly with the first touch of sunrise. I stood there, breathing in the stillness. This time I didn't cry. I smiled. As the sun rose higher, painting the city gold, I realized something my father must have known long ago. Real inheritance isn't land or money, it's resilience. It's courage. It's the quiet promise to build again, even after everything has fallen apart. And that, I decided, would be the story I left behind.